What happens if you set out to do good, but you end up with blood on your hands? Our story begins not with a king or a warrior, but with a most unlikely lad. In the parish of Mayo, there lived a young man named Guleesh, and if you were asked by anyone about him, they'd say, he's nothing to speak of, no great strength or cleverness. They would only speak of his feet, for Guleesh had a powerful aversion to washing his feet, so powerful that he was called Guleesh na Gustu, Guleesh of the black feet. He was a country boy, often scolded by his father, and he spent his days dreaming of something more. And in one particular night, after a fierce row, he found himself looking at the old grassy mound of Arath, one of those ancient forts that are doorways to the other world. He looked up at the moon and he wished for an adventure, he wished for heroism. And as fate would have it, or perhaps something else would have it, his wish was answered. From the north came a sound like a great rushing wind. A roaring whirlwind tore across the land. But within the wind, Guleesh heard not just noise, but voices, joyous, wild, cheerful voices with a strange rhythm to them. Before he could even think, a magnificent horse with a bridle of gold and a saddle of silver appeared before him, and on its back Guleesh saw the source of the voices. He saw a host of the shogues, the fairy folk. They were tall, beautiful, and terrible all at once, with eyes that shone like moonlight on water. "Come, Guleesh," they cried, "come ride with us tonight." And with his heart pounding with fear and excitement, Guleesh leaped onto the horse and joined the fairy host. They rode over the land faster than the wind, and when they reached the sea they did not stop. They cried, "High over cap," and soared over the waves as if it were solid ground. It was then they revealed their purpose to Guleesh. They were riding to the palace of the King of France. His daughter, the beautiful Princess Isabel, was to be married against her will that very night, and the fairies, they meant to steal her away. But they needed Guleesh, for he was a creature of flesh and blood, and only he could provide an anchor for the mortal princess in their spirit world. Guleesh, caught in the thrill of the magic, quickly agreed. The fairies, already invisible, granted the same gift to Guleesh, and they slipped into the grandest palace that he had ever seen. There, in the midst of the glittering court, was the princess. She was more beautiful than the morning, but her eyes were pools of deepest sorrow. As the fairy set a spell and threw magic powder, she vanished from the sight of the stunned courtiers. A fairy tripped her, and she was placed behind Guleesh on his magical steed. With a cry, the host turned and fled, the sounds of a panicked palace fading behind them into the night. They raced back across the sea towards Ireland, the princess clinging to Guleesh in a terrified silence. But as they neared the familiar Rath, a feeling of dread and guilt washed over Guleesh. What was he doing? This was no rescue, this was no adventure, this was a terrible crime. As the fairy host began to descend, a courage he had never known before flared in his heart. In one swift movement, he leapt from the horse, pulling the princess with him, and cried out, "I will not help you in this wickedness." The fairies were enraged. Their beautiful faces twisted in fury. They screamed and cursed his name, and in a final, spiteful act, one of them leaned down and breathed a dark enchantment upon the princess. "Since you have stolen her upon us, Guleesh, she shall be no good to you. She shall be without speech, as if she were dead." And with that, a last mocking laugh, the whirlwind vanished, leaving Guleesh alone in sudden silence with the beautiful, motionless princess. Guleesh brought the princess to his home. His family were astonished, but they took her in. For a year she lived with them. Guleesh cared for her, spoke to her, and grew to care for her deeply. But she never spoke a word. She was like a lovely, silent statue, her eyes forever locked on some distant, unseen sorrow. Guleesh never gave up hope. He remembered the fairies returned on the same night each year, so 1 year to the day he waited by the rath. True to form, the whirlwind returned. Guleesh begged for a way to break the curse. The fairies, feigning pity, told him of a special herb that grew nearby. "Make a broth of it," they said, "and she will speak again. She will become human and living again." Overjoyed, Guleesh found the herb and prepared it. He brought the broth to the princess, his hands trembling with hope, and he fed it to her. And she laid her head down, closed her eyes, and died without ever making another sound. The fairy's revenge was complete. Guleesh was left with a broken, silent heart forever, remembering the princess he tried and failed to save. That is the tragic tale of Guleesh na Gosdu.